Hello guys, so today this is going to be the assignment for Monday, April 2nd. So there's three steps that I would highly recommend you guys write this ones either in the back or in the front, somewhere that you can see them. And this is how I'm going to be working this prompts. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back and work with quadratics again. What that means is that we're going to be solving for a letter. And the way that we are actually going to do this, there's three steps. Okay, so the first two steps you're going to do for every single problem. The third step, it depends if you have a negative inside of your square root. And we only going to do the step number 3 whenever we have a negative inside of my square root. But if we don't have one, we just kind of skip this step. I'm not going to do it. So let's go ahead and look at what do I mean by this. So step number 1 says you're going to be moving all your numbers to the right. Okay, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Step number 2 says that we need to go ahead and square root both sides. After that, that's it. That's all we got to do. So let's go ahead and start with number 1. So let's start with number 1. That way you can see. So we're going to be getting a quadratic just like this one. And we're going to have to go ahead and solve it. So I'm going to go ahead and put my little number right here. Or my little number. I'm going to put my line between my equal sign. And we're just going to go ahead and move everything to the right. So that means I'm going to have to move this 10 to the other side over here with this 10. Now, what's going to happen over here on the left? It's going to cancel out. On the right, we're going to add up. So it's going to be 36. Now we have n to the second power equals 36, okay? Step number 2 says that we're going to have to square root both times. And now the reason why we're square rooting is because we have that power of 2. We're trying to leave the n alone, so the best thing that we can do is square root it to get rid of that power of 2. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we're going to go ahead, square root n squared, and then this one's going to be equals. And now, it's very important that you understand, every time that your answer for today is always going to have two different things. Well, we're going to have two different answers, one positive and one negative. So we're going to be calling it plus and minus. So you always got to put plus and minus on your answers after you do the square root. So right here, we're going to do the square root of n squared and the square root of 36. Okay, we have everything that we need. So what's going to happen is my square root and my power 2 are going to cancel out. So what I'm going to have is just n is equal to, and for this one, what is the square root of 36? Just 6. So my answer is this right here. Okay, pretty easy. You see the difference? So step number 1, move everything to the right. Step number 2, square root. And that is it. That's all we're going to do. So let's do number 3. That way you guys can see what exactly we mean again. So I'm going to have to move everything to the right. So in this case, the number that I need to move is 16. So I'm going to go ahead, divide by 16, divide by 16. So now we're going to have x squared is equal to 9 over 16. Now, step number 2 says that we're going to have to square root this. So it's going to be square root x squared equals plus or minus. Now, due to the fact that we have a fraction and this fraction cannot be simplified, I'm going to go ahead and write my square roots like this. So I'm going to square root the top and the bottom separately. You're going to have to do this for some of the problems, not all of them, but some of them you're actually going to have to do it. And then we're going to simplify and going to get our answer. So we're going to start with x equals plus or minus. Now, what is the square root of 9? 3. What is the square root of 16? 4. So my answer in this case is going to be 3 over 4. And that is it. Okay, that's second problem. That's problem number 3. And we're going to keep going. We're going to be doing the same thing over and over again just so you guys can really get the idea of what's going on. So number 5, same thing. Step number 1 is move everything to the right. So I'm going to start with the 7. So minus 7. Minus 7 in this case. So that's going to give me, I believe, 134. Now we have 2x squared equals 134. We divide both sides by 2. Okay, those cancel out. And now we have, well, let me rewrite what we have. So we have x squared is equal to 67. Now, once I have this, I'm going to have to square root both sides. So it's going to be x squared, or the square root of x squared equals plus or minus. Don't forget, you're always going to have plus or minus on your answer. Square root of 67. Now, let's finish writing our answer. So it's going to be x, because those two cancel out, right? Equals plus or minus square root of 67. Now, the reason why I'm going to leave it as is because 67, I cannot simplify it. I cannot find any partners or anything to really simplify that number, so we're going to leave it as is. It's not going to change. And that is my answer for that one. Let's do a couple more. That's 3 of them. Let's do number 7. After number 7, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of the negative ones. That way you guys can go ahead and see how that will work. So let's go. We're going to start with moving everything to the right. So I'm going to be moving the 4. So plus 4. That's 81. Now we're going to have 81. I'm going to use x squared, even though it's b. Now we divide both sides by 81. 81. That's going to give me x squared is equal to 1. Now we have to square root both sides, obviously. So x squared, or square root of x squared equals plus and minus the square root of 1. Now, it's just going to be x over here equals plus or minus. And remember, square root of 1 is just 1. 1, we're done. There we go. That is how you go about simplifying this quadratics. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over. Let me see what number would be good. I'm going to go ahead and do 17. I'm going to do 3. I'm going to do 13, 15, and 17. Once I'm done with those, I want you guys to go ahead and just focus on the right. Okay, you're going to be doing all 20 on the right, and that's it. So let's do some negatives here. So we're going to start with 13. Now, we start the same way. We move everything to the right. So in this case, it's going to be plus 8. Plus 8. That gives me negative 30. Now I have 5x squared equals to negative 30. We divide both sides by 5. Those cancel out. So it's going to give me x squared is equal to negative 6. Now, this is very important that we understand what's going to happen next, because this is the difference between having a positive number inside of your quadratic, or your square root, and having a negative. So we're going to start same thing. So it's going to be square root of x squared equals plus or minus, still the same, square root of a negative 6. Now, the difference here between the other problems that we had is that we can have a negative inside of the square root. So instead, we're going to go ahead and transform this one into an imaginary number. That way we can work through it. The way that this one's going to change is pretty easy. And this is going to be the blue section that we were talking about earlier, right? If the answer is negative, then you turn the square root into an imaginary number. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So the way that we do this is pretty simple. We keep the square root of the same number, but now it's positive. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put an I in front. Okay, everything else stays exactly the same. Equals x squared. And as you can see, that is my answer. That's it. All I had to do is I went from a negative square, or square root of negative 6. And what I did, I turned it into a positive and put an I in front of it. So I turned it into an imaginary number. So we're going to be doing that every time that we have a negative inside of our square roots. So let's do another one. Let's see how this actually works. So we move everything to the right. So minus 6, minus 6. Now we have 3m squared equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 3. And I have m squared is equal to negative 2. We're going to go ahead and square root both sides. So it's going to be m squared is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 2. Like I said, we cannot have a negative inside of my square root. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. And we're going to keep the plus or minus. We're going to put the I on the front. And it's going to be the square root of 2. Everything else the same. So that's my final answer here. So m is equal to plus or minus I square root of 2. Let's do one more. That way you guys know how to do the final ones. And then we're all good. So this is going to be the final one. I'm going to show you guys. We move everything to the right. So minus 6. Minus 6. That's negative 98. It's equal to 7. Now, I do not know at the top of my head what this is. So I'm going to have to probably do long division here on the side. Just so I can figure it out. So 7 divided by 98. So that's 1. That gives me 2 and 8. That's 4. So that's 14. So this is going to be n squared. We divide by 7. Divide by 7. So it's going to be n squared is equal to negative 14. Okay. Now we square root that. So it's going to square root of n squared is equal to plus or minus square root of negative 14. We can have a negative inside my square root. We change it to an imaginary number. There we go. And we put everything else that we had. And we are done. All right, that's how it's going to be work. Pretty easy. I did most of the left side for you guys. So what I want you guys to do at this point, just focus on the right. Okay, that is it.